and welcome to this meeting in public of the Policing Board. First, I'd like to extend condolences to the Chief Constable on the loss of his father, who sadly died this week, and I think a lot of you know he's not with us today. Our thoughts are with the Chief Constable and his family at this difficult time for them. Deputy Chief Constable, standing in and doing a good job. You and your team are very welcome as always. We're also delighted to welcome the new Director General of the National Crime Agency, Lynn Owens, to this her first public engagement with the board. A welcome is also extended to her colleague Johnny Gwynn, NCA Strategic Relationship Lead for Northern Ireland, and Jenny Bell, NCA Head of Investigations for Scotland and Northern Ireland, to all very welcome. I'd also like to say a very warm welcome to a number of visitors today. We have visitors every month, but this month we have a special group called the Shankill Area Social History Group. So you're all very welcome, and we look forward to talking to you after the meeting. I would also like just to point out, since we have our Police Federation people here, that draw your attention to the fact that they launched a very successful campaign on March the 1st. It's called We Are You, and it's just to bring it to the attention of the public. This initiative centres on 3 short mini movies which hope to reinforce the fact that officers are firstly mothers, fathers and grandparents, and very powerful emotive movies available online and will shortly be screened in cinemas, so worth watching out for. A lot of the focus in today's meeting was around NCA, and we focused on operations for the NCA in Northern Ireland and how the agency actually works in support of PSNI. Over the last number of months, we have had a series of discussions and written reports from NCA officers, but this is the first board meeting in public involving the Director General. The board has a new statutory duty to monitor the exercise of the functions of the NCA in Northern Ireland. And one of the ways we have agreed to do this is through the Director General's attendance at meetings in public twice a year. Reports on the NCA's work in Northern Ireland will also be provided to the board on a quarterly basis. And thank you, Director General. We have received a written report and we have a range of questions to ask. We will be keen to hear from you and Deputy Chief Constable Drew Harris on the benefits that NCA is bringing to policing, the measurement of that, and how some of the emerging threats and risks to our community can be helped by the expertise of the agency, or how you can assist us in tackling these emerging threats. Because we all know crime isn't something that just happens in a local street. It's much more complicated than that. So we will look forward to hearing how that's all working. Earlier on, we were looking at the board's longer-term plans for policing. It is important that the strategic plans of the NCA take account of policing priorities in Northern Ireland, and we will be publishing a new strategic outcomes document at the end of March, which will take the board's work right through to 2020. From the latest NCA performance report, it is clear that joint operations between NCA and PSNI during the first 3 quarters of 15-16 have been successful in disrupting organised crime gangs. And in fact, only this week, the media has reported that 9 people have been arrested in Northern Ireland as part of a joint NCA-PSNI operation on suspicion of accessing indecent images of children. This is just one of the many operations being undertaken by NCA in Northern Ireland, and we will hear more detail about the work from the Director General in a short while. I'm not going to take up much more time because we have a lot of questions, but I've been asked just to say that we're moving forward on the appointment of a new Assistant Chief Constable, with the advertisement being circulated on the 7th of March. Deputy Chief, we have your written report, so if you would like to make some opening remarks, we will then hear from the Director General and then we'll move on to questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. My first comment here is in respect of our Chief Constable to extend my deepest sympathy to George and his family circle. I know that he's been very much touched by messages of condolence and support, and I know also that he and his family are very much in our thoughts and prayers at this very difficult time. I too am very pleased to extend a warm welcome to Lynn Owens as the Director General of the NCA. All of us in policing were very pleased to learn of her appointment, and very pleased now to be able to work with her and her team. The NCA became fully operational last May, and that has made a real impact in terms of additional capacity and expertise the NCA have brought to bear here in Northern Ireland to keep people safe. This is already paying dividends in operations, and some of this will be outlined throughout this public session. But I'll highlight in particular areas around keeping the most vulnerable safe from sexual exploitation, either online or through child sexual exploitation. I'd also point to the expertise that we can tap into around cybercrime, again, around keeping people safe online, particularly the vulnerable, particularly children. The NCA have a real national and international expertise. Again, we can now tap into that fully. And also then the expertise that they bring to the cross-border task force related to organised crime. And tomorrow that task force has its first strategic meeting at which they will agree the strategic assessment for organised crime on these islands and how we together with Dublin-based law enforcement agencies can work together. But the NCA bring particular expertise which is based on their international reach and how that international element of organised crime impacts on organised crime on this island. So these are all very positive developments. And also then the strength of the accountability arrangements is illustrated by both our attendance today at this board, and it's not unusual for police officers to be here, but I'm sure that this is illustrative of how accountability in Northern Ireland is factored into all our operational decisions, and is a very visible manifestation of the importance of that accountability and the importance we place on being accountable to the policing board on behalf of this society. Then move on just to some of the financial pressures that we are facing. In year, we have faced a budget reduction of £26.2 million. So after a very significant organisational effort, at the end of January 2016, we are now projecting a break-even position for this year. We've also then provided the board a copy of our resource plan for next year. That plan is based on a 2% reduction to the core police budget. And so, as previously outlined to the board, for this year, given the operational demands that may happen in this year, our professional judgment is that we still require a minimum of 6,963 police officers to maintain operational resilience supported by the appropriate level of police staff. So these numbers of staff and police officers are by and large protected in this balanced budget for 16-17, but that has meant that cuts in the region of 10% will have to be made to our non-pay budgets, and that will have impacts, and some of the potential impacts I've outlined in the written report. But these could be or will be a reduction in overtime, resulting in reduced capacity to deal with major police operations, both investigations and or public disorder, reduced patrolling and possible delays in attendance time, reduced ability to invest in new technology, so in effect capital expenditure to tackle emerging areas, criminality, and that would be specifically cybercrime. And lastly then, a probable impact is the closure of at least 12 police stations to make savings again in our non-staff budgets, and also then perhaps a further reduction in opening hours. Also then, an additional pressure which we have yet to budget for, but which will occur in this year, is our duty to conduct investigations into the activities of the individual commonly referred to as state knife. We cannot be definite as to how much these investigations will cost, but it could be in the region of £5 to £7 million per annum for several years, and perhaps upwards of 5 years. As an organisation, we are not saying that it shouldn't be done. On the contrary, we absolutely accept that it must be done. It absolutely must be done, and it is our duty to make sure it is done. But the reality is that it will place an additional substantial burden on already stretched resources. In respect of operational highlights around our police performance over the last month, I'm immensely proud, as are the team, immensely proud of the sheer scope and scale of what all of my colleagues, both police officers and police staff, are doing to keep people safe. At the moment, 2 operations are ongoing, specifically targeted against street-level drug dealing, and secondly against burglary. And some early indications are 96 suspects arrested, 122 drug seizures, and 18 people charged, with another further 23 reported to the Public Prosecution Service. Secondly then, in respect of our burglary operation, 42 arrests have been made, 16 charges then have followed, with other individuals then reported to the Public Prosecution Service. And at this time, our burglary is showing a reduction, and we would be optimistic that the target that the board set us in respect of burglary is within reach, with extra effort in respect of both drugs and burglary, which we are actively pursuing out. It also then referred to major trafficking operations, drugs trafficking operations, and over the last number of weeks, £750,000 worth of cannabis, amphetamine seized on Malaria on the M2, an individual charged, and in Portadown, Lurgan and Craigavon areas, more suspects have been arrested and charged in respect of searches linked to heroin trafficking and heroin supply. So this brings the number of individuals linked as part of this operation to 17 individuals charged in respect of very insidious crime of heroin trafficking. In respect of our air support unit, I know the board has taken a close interest in the work of the air support unit over the last number of months. And I would just highlight, besides normal crime work, they have taken part in the search for 27 missing persons, have conducted 2 casualty evacuations, and have assisted very specifically in locating 2 suspects after a shooting incident in West Belfast. Also, other positive news is that the organisation is now in a position to begin rolling out body-worn video cameras to officers delivering frontline policing right across Northern Ireland. We had what we viewed as a very successful pilot in Derry and Strabane. Funding has been allocated to allowing body-worn video technology right across the service. The pilot scheme showed that the evidence produced was of high quality and assisted in bringing convictions and bringing offenders to justice more speedily. In respect of our staff, as we previously reported, the voluntary exit scheme continues. We obviously wish those individuals who are leaving the service well, and the next tranche will leave on the 31st of this month, with 2 further tranches at the end of June and the end of September. For those who remain, particularly within police staff, there will be a specific set of promotion processes this year, and police staff have been without opportunities for advancement for a number of years now, and we believe it's absolutely necessary that we should do this, but secondly, I think it is an endorsement for police staff of our ongoing commitment and investment in them. We look forward very much to running those promotion processes and allowing people then to advance in the organisation. In respect of the policing with the community strategy that we've adopted and the implementation of the policing with the community strategy, we've also briefed the board in respect of our employee engagement strategy, part of which is the wellbeing survey conducted by Durham University. This is recently closed, and we had 3,600 colleagues complete the survey, which equates to a 38% response rate, and this is viewed as being very positive. We have received the results in the next few weeks, and obviously when we've received those results, we will share them with the board as part of our ongoing reporting about the advances we're making with the policing with the community strategy. Also then, the HMIC has conducted their first field inspection in PSNI. Board members were present at the initial debrief, in fact, which was a hot debrief. So we're now waiting then for further assessment of the HNIC on their view of both our efficiency and also our effectiveness. And in respect of effectiveness, you may recall HNIC focused particularly on vulnerability and how we police and assist those who are most vulnerable in our society. So we look forward very much to that report, and we'll work obviously with the board around its recommendations and implementation of those in the coming year. Turning to the past, members will be very aware of the decision by the Public Prosecution Service to withdraw charges in the Omagh Bond prosecution. From a police perspective, this is profoundly disappointing result, and we feel very much for the families who obviously have been let down that another prosecution in effect is failed. The last prosecution in 2007 resulted in an acquittal, and thereafter police renewed their investigation into the Omagh bombing, and in part then we also looked at the 2009 civil action, and from that then we ascertained that there may be a way to bring an offender to justice. Detectives collected evidence, interviewed witnesses, and a file was prepared for the Public Prosecution Service, and at the Public Prosecution Service a decision was taken to proceed with charges, but those proceedings obviously finished at preliminary inquiry last week. And as I said, this is profoundly disappointing for us, and our thoughts are with the families who obviously have been re-traumatized and severely disappointed by this result. We do profoundly regret that we were unable to secure a conviction for the Omagh bomb so long after this event, and those individuals, victims and families of those who were killed obviously deserve justice and have yet to secure it. We remain ready and willing to pursue any new lines of inquiry should new information be forthcoming. As we have said before repeatedly, there are people who know information about this, who could come forward, who could provide evidence, and we would appeal to them to do so. This investigation is now closed. With new information, it would reopen and we would pursue it with vigour. At this time, there are no new lines of inquiry, but without further assistance, this matter is unlikely to advance any further. In respect of inquests, obviously very considerable coverage of the Lord Chief Justice's review of legacy cases, and we are supportive of the proposals he has made. We are committed to playing our full part in supporting the colonial process, and we also welcome the Secretary of State's comments at Westminster last week, when she indicated that a credible reform package for inquests put together in the government would take very seriously a request to provide some funding to support it. On the basis of those positive indicators, we are working at the moment with the Court Service to draft a business case for submission to the Department of Justice. I've touched upon the cross-border task force. It is gathering momentum. They will have their initial strategic meeting tomorrow, from which then strategic priorities for all the law enforcement organisations involved will be decided upon. And whilst our budget reductions are undoubtedly challenging, there are opportunities for further efficiencies and better ways of working to be found. We are committed to that and committed to working with the board in doing that. And thus we are optimistic about the policing landscape, and we are optimistic about the future. We're incredibly proud of all of our staff, and we're glad to very much welcome and support, as you have, Chair, the Police Federation's We Are You campaign, and wholeheartedly support the message that police officers and staff are integral to our society. I would also wish to congratulate Constable Mark McGarty, who last night received the Justice in the Community Award for his work with young people in South Armagh. Constable McGarty is attached to Newton Hamilton Neighbourhood Policing Team, and as always, the team present and all our staff remain committed and determined to do all we can to keep people safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chief, for a very comprehensive report. We were just desperate for the questions to come. We're going to have to wait a bit longer because we are going to ask the Director General to read the report.
Chair, thank you for the welcome and for the opportunity to communicate some of the work which the National Crime Agency has been progressing with the Police Service of Northern Ireland. Like others in this room, I just want to add my personal and the organisation's condolences to Chief Constable George Hamilton. Of course, he remains very much in our thoughts and our prayers today. The National Crime Agency is committed to tackling serious and organised crime throughout the UK, regardless of who commits it. You will already be aware that the impact of serious and organised crime harms communities, destroys families, and can ruin lives. Our purpose is to serve and protect the public throughout the UK, but we simply cannot do this without working with our law enforcement partners, such as the Police Service of Northern Ireland here in Northern Ireland, and without, crucially, having the confidence of the public. Serious and organised crime is changing rapidly and becoming more complex, so it is vital that the NCA develops and utilises its capabilities and resources in a flexible way to mitigate that threat. We can only do that by working closely with law enforcement and other partners, both here and overseas. Since we became fully operational here in Northern Ireland last year, between May and December, the National Crime Agency has recorded 35 disruptions against organised crime groups that operate here in Northern Ireland and against high priority threats to the community, with 6 of these occurring in the last quarter, quarter 3. 4 of these disruptions in that quarter related to child sexual exploitation. In total, that specific operation has seen 25 arrests, with 9 people charged so far. And December also saw the first sentence that has been achieved under that operation, which ran under the operation name Operation Jarrah. A further 2 disruptions occurred under the drugs threat, with convictions and sentences being secured under Operations Deformable and Free Willing. Excuse the operational names, not allocated by me, I should add. Operation Deformable, this is the investigation that began following the seizure of in excess of 45 kilograms of various Class A drugs and precursor chemicals capable of producing £10 million worth of amphetamine sulfate. Some of these drugs were destined for Northern Ireland. The NCA received support from PSNI, Garda Síochána and other European partners, and 2 arrests have been made as a result of our investigation. So far, 1 person has been sentenced to 2 years for assisting importation of Class B drugs into UK at Leeds Crown Court in December 2015. The investigation into this matter continues. Another operation, Operation Conning, covers an NCA investigation into money laundering offences, following on from a border force seizure of in excess of 30 kilograms of cocaine from an aircraft at Brayton Aerodrome in Yorkshire in November 2014. This investigation spanned into Northern Ireland, and again we were very much supported by the Police Service of Northern Ireland. 3 individuals have recently been sentenced to a total of 66 years. The Northern Ireland aspect of the investigation continues. The NCA continues to operate against serious and organised threats impacting upon Northern Ireland and works in close partnership with operational partners here, including the PSNI, to keep people safe through protecting crime, preventing crime, protecting communities and protecting offenders. We remain extremely appreciative of the ongoing and invaluable support of our operational partners within this jurisdiction. For example, we carried out joint proactive operational activity with PSNI against image offenders. 9 arrests were made and a number of children were safeguarded. We are still at an early stage of this bit of the investigation and are therefore unable to say more, but of course we'll report back at a later date. When the NCA became fully operational last May, it was agreed with the PSNI that 2 joint CSE child sexual exploitation operations will be planned for the first year. The first, Operation Jarrah, has previously been reported. The second operation that took place last week is honouring that commitment, and offenders should be assured that wherever you are, be it in England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, we will find you. You leave a digital footprint and we will ensure the internet is not a safe place for you to access indecent images. Before the NCA became fully operational in Northern Ireland in May 2015, the legislation did not allow us to undertake civil recovery and tax investigations in Northern Ireland. Since May, the Civil Recovery Team has had considerable engagement with Police Service of Northern Ireland to generate referrals focusing on where civil recovery and tax can be used. we have now seen the first PSNI referral to the CRT since the NCA became operational here. This is a significant step and is the result of a continued series of meetings and presentations to PSNI about civil recovery and tax and the adoption criteria. As well, the NCA providing investigative operational support to PSNI activities within Northern Ireland, across the UK and internationally. That includes our provision of specialist advice and guidance, our role as an intelligence conduit, the brokerage of the support from operational partners across the UK, obtaining the support and intelligence from international partners, conducting operational deployments, training and continued professional development, and intelligence collection and exchange. PSNI has also provided the NCA with support which we value greatly, such as intelligence collection and exchange, premises searches, your custody facilities, arrest activities, operational deployments, and training and continued professional development. In addition to operational and investigative work to counter the threat from serious and organised crime to the communities of Northern Ireland, the NCA also contributes on a more strategic level. The NCA remains a contributor to PSNI's multi-agency crime ops tasking and coordination group, your organised crime task force groups and subgroups, PSNI training, and the continuous professional development sessions for all your staff. The NCA continues to produce and share strategic assessments and threat updates to our Northern Ireland law enforcement partners to ensure they are aware of new and emerging crime trends, criminal modus operandi, and the strategic context of UK serious and organised criminality. The NCA will continue to coordinate and support operational activity, sharing intelligence assets and capabilities with our partners, including the PSNI. We maintain specialist capabilities and services are best delivered nationally for the benefit of all law enforcement, and a flexible operational capability which prioritises the deployment of its resources to undertake targeted activity to cut serious and organised crime. Here in Northern Ireland, the NCA will support the PSNI to mitigate the threat of serious and organised crime and serve and protect your public. Here in Northern Ireland, the National Crime Agency absolutely acknowledges the PSNI's primacy and will support them and you wherever we can to mitigate the threat of serious and organised crime and serve and protect the public. I'd like to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. So we've already had some discussion upstairs, but obviously we want to ask some questions now. So I'm going to go straight to you, Director General, and the first question to you is from Paul Nolan.
Good afternoon and welcome, Director General. I wanted to ask you really about the recommendations that have come forward from the House of Commons Home Affairs Committee on the primacy on counter-terrorism, and that recommendation is that the NCA should assume that primacy, but there are a number of caveats, and one is to do with accountability, because the report published, the book called The New Architecture of Policing, does make the point that the NCA needs to produce and make public benchmarks whereby its performance can be assessed. Parliament needs to be able to hold the NCA to account for its performance so that there is ongoing improvement. So there is a concern there, and I'd just like to get your response on that. If the accountability is directly to the Home Secretary, what reassurances can be given about public accountability? The second question then really again comes out of the Home Affairs Committee's concern that the justification for moving primacy from the net was that it was affecting their ability to focus on their other core duties. So if it's moved to NCA, why would it not have the same effect, i.e. obviously it will impact upon your ability to concentrate on those things such as child sexual exploitation, cybercrime and so on, the ones that you outlined. So why would it not impact on you in just the same way as it has on the net? And finally, I'd be grateful if you could just give us some indication of what all of this might mean for it to take place, what it might mean for Northern Ireland.
Thank you for the question. Perhaps I could start with your question about public accountability first. I am absolutely clear that, like the Police Service of Northern Ireland, the law enforcement agency that is the National Crime Agency polices with community's consent. And therefore it is absolutely crucial that we retain the trust and confidence of all the communities that we serve, including those here in Police Service of Northern Ireland. It's why we have taken the commitment to our Code of Ethics training so seriously, and why the relationship between ourselves and the Chief Constable and his team is as strong as it needs to be. You know through the Memorandum of Understanding that I have committed to come here twice a year so that you can hold me very publicly accountable in this way. And of course, I would expect George Hamilton to also directly be raising concerns if he had any worries about how we were being deployed here. We are absolutely clear here in Northern Ireland. We operate with his guidance, his support, and only at his request. So that's answering the public accountability point. In respect of counter-terrorism, my role is to deliver the strategic priorities that have been set by the Home Secretary. I am aware that she has announced that she is going to undertake a review of ownership of counter-terrorism responsibilities. At the moment, that review has not reported, and therefore counter-terrorism is not one of the strategic priorities that she has set for me. There are, of course, some overlaps between the work that we do and the work that impacts on counter-terrorism. So whether it's information and intelligence that we're getting from overseas partners, whether it's the supply of firearms or the movement through organised immigration crime, all of those could have links with counter-terrorism. And therefore my current role requires me to have a very close operational and strategic working relationship with my colleagues in the Metropolitan Police Service, and particularly their lead there, Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley. But at the moment, it is not moving to be my responsibility, and until that point, I am absolutely focused on protecting the communities of Northern Ireland and elsewhere from serious and organised crime.
Thank you. I'm just on the back of it, and really the question is not for the Director General, but for the Deputy Chief Constable on the basis of the question asked. There's a review going on by the British Home Secretary Theresa May, but from the PSNI's point of view, it was made clear that counter-terrorism would not be a part of the NCA's remit here, and will the Deputy Chief Constable make it clear that that is still the position of the PSNI in terms of it?
Well, yes. We work very much, well, we work completely within the arrangements set out in the St Andrews Agreement. We have a unique relationship with the Security Service, MI5. We are given specific responsibilities in the St Andrews Agreement, which are unique for a police service within the United Kingdom. And also we face a threat here in Northern Ireland related to both loyalists and environmentalists and Republicans, which is different from the threat in the rest of the UK and Great Britain. And so we would say that our responsibility for counter-terrorism is very much around promoting public confidence in the police service, making sure that the counter-narrative, which is supported by the accountability arrangements that we have through the Policing Board, the oversight arrangement we have with the Police Ombudsman, and then our responsibilities then to the local executive through the Department of Justice, all very clearly set out accountability arrangements for us and how we work in this jurisdiction. And we would be anxious to maintain that. We think it has been successful. We think it has been successful in terms of results and has been successful in terms of a coherent, really counter-narrative to the corrosive narrative of both sets of factions around policing.
And the next question from the Director from Roisin McGlone.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You're very welcome, Director General. And I just want to bring the questions back down from the national level to back to local level. And I ask you, Director General, in your summary report, you refer to the NCA leading on the ongoing investigation into allegations of financial irregularities and corruption arising from the NAMA, Northern Ireland Loan Book Operation Compass. I would just like to ask you, can you tell us what your role in that investigation is, and the implications, if any, on that investigation following the recent Spotlight programme? Thank you.
So the National Crime Agency was asked to undertake this operation by the Chief Constable of Northern Ireland, George Hamilton, in accordance with the protocol that you have seen and which we have agreed. So we have allocated resources to that investigation, and it's being overseen by an independent senior investigating officer reporting into one of my deputy directors. I met with him on Monday. My role as the Director General of the agency is to make sure that he has sufficient resources to thoroughly, fairly and impartially investigate that allegation to the point to establish whether there is a case to be put before the prosecution service. I know that he has been engaging with the BBC in light of the Spotlight programme, and of course will follow any lines of inquiry that arise as a result of that programme being shown, which I think was on Monday night.
Sorry. Can I do a follow-up? Yes. Just in relation to that, you said I'll start a bit about in relation to the resources. Can we be assured, and more importantly, can the public be reassured that the inquiry has the resources available to it that it requires? And can you give us any indication of a time frame, the number of people questioned or the number of people arrested to date?
So in terms of the resources that are being allocated, one of the benefits of the National Crime Agency operating in this jurisdiction is that we can flex the resources from across the organisation to be able to respond. And that is what is happening within this case. I think the answer to the question that was given yesterday at the Public Accounts Committee was that any senior investigating officer would always like more resources. But I am confident that the Deputy Director has the resources that he needs. If he comes forward requesting more, that will go into the National Crime Agency tasking process, and if we need to, we will flex that across our organisation to be able to respond. At the moment, I'm not in a position to give you a timescale for completion of that inquiry. What I will say is that it has to be thorough, and at the point it is concluded, we have to be satisfied that it's been done to the very best of our ability, and that is the assurance I give you.
So just one further point in relation to any cross-border element to it. Is there any cross-border element to it from an NCA perspective? And if so, are we getting, say, in full collaboration on an interagency basis?
As it's a live investigation, I'd rather not go into the detail of who we're working with in respect of that specific case currently, but what I would say is that if we do need to work with other partners internationally or locally, then we will always pursue that and escalate it to national authorities if it isn't happening in the right way, as a general point.
Thank you.
I just want to, to Laura's, I think it is important that it is done in a timely fashion, and so it is a bit disappointing we don't have a time scale here. This is a story of enormous public interest, and a number of committees, including one of the committees chaired by Dahi Mackay, has been doing work in relation to this. I understand it's a live investigation, but I would urge you to carry this out in a timely fashion.
Move to Jonathan Craig for a different question.
Director General, I think one of the things that has absolutely plagued Northern Ireland, and it's obviously because we're the only part of the UK with a land border to treat people. There is growing evidence that there seems to be a lot of drugs, unfortunately, being trafficked through Northern Ireland, probably straight on to the mainland, but not all of it. What actions is your department taking to tackle that drug flow problem and also to tackle the crime gangs that are obviously behind that?
So we haven't seen a significant increase in drug availability on the streets of Northern Ireland, but we are working closely with the Police Service of Northern Ireland. It's the area where we have a particularly well-developed threat picture, but you are right, having a land border does increase the threat of importation of commodity, whether that commodity be in order of money or firearms or drugs, and that's something that both the Police Service of Northern Ireland and ourselves are keenly aware of. We are playing a full role in the cross-border task force, and we think that presents an appropriate opportunity to take action. There are 3 organised crime groups that the Police Service of Northern Ireland are currently working on in relation to drug supply, and we are playing our part in those investigations.
Thank you very much. And I think a final question for you, Director General, from Larry Osborne.
You already referred to the memorandum of understanding that is between the PSNI, NCA and the Policing Board. And we'd just like to ask you to advise the Board on the financial contribution the PSNI makes, is currently making and will make in the future, and on an annual basis. And what do you consider are the added value of the involvement of the NCA in Northern Ireland?
Excuse me, I have to refer to my paperwork just to make sure I give you the correct figures. So the PSNI made a payment of 1,390,052 to the NCA in respect of the funding contributions for last year. The year we're coming to the end of, so 2015-16. It's not anticipated that this will change in the forthcoming year. The level of the funding contribution made by the PSNI is decided by both the PSNI and the National Crime Agency on an annual basis, and is pro-rated to the NCA's total funding from Her Majesty's Treasury for the relevant financial period. The funding to the NCA, as agreed, is a flat 371 million per annum for the resource cash budget through to the 31st of March 2020. So that's the result of the spending review on the agency, and as reported in the Chancellor's budget statement in the autumn. The annual funding contribution from the PSNI is 0.373% of the NCA's total funding from Treasury, so it is anticipated that future years will also be about 1.4 million.
All right, that concludes the questions for you. You can breathe a sigh of relief, and we'll move on to PSNI now. And I'm going to go straight to a double act. Jerry Kelly and Ross Hussey. Start with them. Who wants to go first?
There's a new one. Hey there, Ross. Thank you, Chair. The Deputy Chief Constable, I know you know that the Arlene Atkinson controversy, we put it that way, her disappearance and death is very much in the public domain at the moment. But one of the key issues around that is an issue of the public interest immunity certificate which has been issued. And I wanted to ask, did the request originate from the PSNI, and if it did, what was the criteria used, if you gave some explanation for that? I mean, by its essence, public interest immunity is about the public interest, and I think it's fair to say that the public are find it very difficult to understand why, since this case is not a conflict-related case, that such a PII would be issued.
Thank you. The PII process allows us to make, in effect, representations through ministers and then on to the coroner or a judge to decide on sensitive matters. And the balancing exercise is whether it is in the public interest for that information to remain confidential, or is it in the public interest for the administration of justice that it is used. And so, whilst we would make recommendations, final decision always lies with either the coroner or the judge in a particular case. And this case refers to lawful murder, disappearance and murder of Arlene Atkinson. And Robert Howard, right up until his death, was the prime suspect, and also was the subject of ongoing police inquiry and investigation. And what we seek to protect is our ability, through protecting the methodology by which we collected information and indeed evidence. We have sought then to protect that methodology for use in future such cases. So it is not about protecting embarrassing facts. It's not. It's all about protecting important areas of police operations which we would seek to remain confidential so that they can be used in other such serious crimes going forward. And you're correct, it was not conflict related. It was a crime motivated by Robert Howard and whatever perverse motivation that he had, but at the same time it was obviously a most serious crime, and one that we wish to bring to successful determination in bringing him back before the courts. We were unable to do that, but at the same time we did invest considerable time and effort in pursuit of that individual and in pursuit of evidence which would have allowed us to go back to the PPS with compelling new evidence, and that's what we seek to protect.
Permit me to persist a little. He will obviously know that there's quite a strong belief out there that this is to do with a state agent, and that the suspicion is the state agent has actually harmed himself, or was harmed himself. And would the Deputy Chief Constable accept that going for a public interest immunity certificate in these circumstances has done damage to policing and confidence in policing?
It may have, it has a potential, and certainly some of the, frankly, speculative and their reporting and rumours that have circulated around this case have introduced an element of confidence in policing. I think as the inquest process proceeds, then it will be clear then the energy and effort that we put into the subsequent investigation of Robert Howard after his acquittal in 2005. And that was a determined effort, and resources were set aside and spent in the pursuit of Howard. And I think then from that the public should have confidence in our determination to bring him back before the courts to face justice properly before the jury of his peers for the crime we believe he committed. But can I reiterate that matters of these matters are for decision by the coroner, in this case a judge, and that all material is revealed to the coroner, and the coroner has complete access to this information, and in the end he decides on balancing the needs of justice as opposed to the needs of confidentiality.
Just finishing this to be clear, the initial request is from the PSNI, not from the coroner.
We make the request to the coroner via the Minister of State, and that request is made by us. Otherwise, if we do not make a request, the assumption would be all of this material is in effect for a public hearing, and then would not be treated, would be no longer confidential, and we, in effect, the danger for us, the danger for other law enforcement agencies is that we would lose methodology and become so well known.
Deputy Chief Constable, carrying on from the comments made by Dre Kelly, there's no doubt that anybody that watches any of the police programmes where they show crime scene investigators, nearly all police methods are a matter of public knowledge. I cannot see an English constabulary or Scottish or Welsh situation that would arise where we would have police methods as the reason for not proceeding with that information. As you say yourself, at the end of the hearing, or at the end of the inquiry, the judge may decide to make this evidence public. But as long as Robert Howard is seen to be the aggressor here, he is seen to be the person that removed Aaron Atkinson from this world. I personally agree with you. It's very difficult for you to justify police methods as the reason why this was applied for, when the Chief Constable clearly agreed with yourselves and put this to the Secretary of State. Is there anything else that we can add to this?
Well, the stark reality is that Robert Howard is not a singular or unique case, that there will be other Robert Howards, and we will have to investigate other terrible crimes. And we still have open on the books very many serious crimes where such methodology we would wish to use. So covert investigative techniques to gather information and lead evidence to bring perpetrators before justice. And when that happens, when we enter into the criminal court arena, then all these matters then are further discussed, because we will have disclosure hearings, etc. In the criminal arena. But this is not just, regrettably, not just about Robert Howard. It's about protecting society going forward from those who inflict the worst crimes, crimes of sexually motivated murder, or other murder, or other very serious crimes, including terrorism, human trafficking, drugs trafficking, very serious offences where we need to have full range of tactics. And yes, people may watch dramas and TV dramas, but I have to say that screenwriters and those who write dramas have had probably little or no experience of the frustrations of crime investigation into such a serious matter, where you're pursuing down every possible shred of information and every possible line of inquiry. So what can happen in the linear process of a program of an hour bears no relationship to the real life examination and investigation of these matters. And it doesn't actually, I'm just trying to convey the seriousness with which we view this matter, and this was subject to careful thought and careful consideration, and within the organisation before we even progressed the application to the Minister of State. But we do have to protect our methodology going forward, because regrettably, as I've said, Robert Howard is not a singular or unique case.
Chair, can I carry on with another question? The next question I want to ask is in relation to Rosslea, where recently a caravan was burnt out and the police didn't attend the scene. This was reported widely in the Impartial Reporter in County Fermanagh, and has been speculation as to why the police would not attend. So can you give me an explanation as to why the police would not attend this isolated border area, and can you also give me some reassurance that police will attend incidents in the future for the residents of those areas?
Thank you very much. I'll pass to Mr. Martin.
Thanks, Ross. The incident you're referring to was reported to us by the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service on Sunday the 21st of February at 3:20 in the morning. And you're right, following consultation to the inspector, made the decision not to send patrols to the scene at that time. But we did do other things by way of response. So mobile patrols in Maguire's Bridge area went to the direction of Rosslea and patrolled the roads leading from the scene northwest towards Lisnaskea in the event that whoever had set the fire was trying to flee, that we attempted to intercept them at that time. But unfortunately, nothing was noted. What was actually set on fire was a caravan beside a mobile gospel hall. And these items have been in situ since November 2015. The location is about 2.5 kilometres from the border at Lackey Bridge, and about 300 metres from Dernowood Crossroads. We carried out a range of investigative actions over the coming days, or the days after the incident. So, first of all, we spoke to the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service to try and understand who had reported it. And actually we're still attempting to get that. We have to actually apply in writing to get that. And that's the one outstanding action that's still there. But we did speak to the Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Commander on the ground at the time to get an understanding of what was going on. In the daylight hours, we tasked our air support, but unfortunately it was unable to fly because of visibility difficulties over actually the 2 days following the incident. We carried out a range of other inquiries with the local cost cutter shop. We did a whole range of CCTV inquiries in the days that lay ahead. We spoke to local people, former councillors, current councillors, and of course the injured party in the case was spoken to, and the reasons for not attending were explained to him. And then subsequently we did attend the scene a number of days later, and we carried out house-to-house inquiries. We don't believe that there were any investigative losses for not attending. Forensically, the Fire and Rescue Service had poured considerable amounts of water on the scene, and there were no signs of petrol cans or evidence, and any footprints or other things would have been washed away because it was in a grassy area. The caravan was reduced to its drawbar axle. It was completely destroyed. So why did we not go? Well, this was a dynamic decision, as I've said, made by the duty inspector and then assessed the next day by more senior officers. And that was after full consideration of the available information and intelligence. There was no risk to life to any member of the public. There were no investigative opportunities believed to be compromised or lost. And you know that area much better than I do, and there is a severe threat in Northern Ireland, and that would be an area that we consider to have a high prevailing threat, and certainly a very high